Good evening. It's Friday, May 24th. My name is Leandra Bernstein, and you're watching our regular Friday evening live webcast with Mr. Lyndon LaRouche. Tonight we will be following a different format than what we usually do. We have two questioners in the studio this evening, Cody Jones and Dennis Mason. Lyndon LaRouche will be giving some opening remarks, and I will be following up with some supplementary material to his opening remarks. So without further ado, we present Mr. Lyndon LaRouche.
Yes. Well, thank you. We are in the most dangerous crisis in modern history in terms of both the world and the United States. This requires some consideration of the difficulties we're getting into here, that since the assassination of John F. Kennedy as president, the United States has actually been on a track of decline. Now, this decline has taken various forms. John F. Kennedy's extinction, which is probably a way of putting it, led into a major war which had never been fought at all. MacArthur insisted that was a foolish war, should never start at all, and warned that. And he was right. And this went on from the middle of the decade into the beginning of the next decade. Now, that masked things because there was war activity in terms of money activity, and so forth. So it appeared in some respects that the United States economy was actually recovering from what had happened by the launching of the war. It was not true. It became obvious of that. There was an effort to save the situation by launching an SDI, which was my particular initiative in this case. Had that actually succeeded, we would have escaped the pattern of downslide which the United States has been in, and other countries as well, since that time. The failure to go through with the SDI should have been done because of Bush and other British entities, that we went on a slide down all the way. We had another Bush in, George H.W. Bush. And then we had Bill Clinton, who was not so bad as a president. He made a few mistakes, but he was a serious person and tried to do some things about the economy. For that, he has to get credit. But after that, we had two Bushes, and this Bush was not very good on the brains department. And then we had the following thing of this character now. Now, the result has been that there has been a general long-term decline in the U.S. economy. Some people will say contrary. They say, no, there's a lot more money around. But money is not a measure of productivity, nor is it a measure of wealth. Money is just money. And since the Jackson administration in the United States earlier, which was a very bad period for the United States, the United States has been in the hands of swindlers. Bankers who were nothing but swindlers. And the swindlers controlled us. From the time of Jackson's excess to the presidency, the United States was going downhill with the slave system and everything else, and the bankers. And the British bankers who populated New York City and Boston, but especially the New York City area, were destroying the United States all the way through. Lincoln, in the war that was forced upon him, did two things. He did what he should have done, and he had the guts to do it. He beat the British with his brains, not with the guns. And then we progressed for a while with a great recovery of the United States coming out of that Civil War. We came back to ourselves. But then again and again, the New York bankers, the British bankers, and so forth came in. We went through another First World War we should never have fought. We had no business going into it. Then we went into a Second World War. Roosevelt saved the United States, except he couldn't save it when he was dead. And therefore, before the actual invasion of Europe by the Allied forces to free Europe occurred, we were already spinning down again. And Truman was as much a disaster as anything else. The man was no damn good, plain and simple. All right, so we've come into this situation now. It's worse and worse and worse. The morality is almost non-existent. The quality of work done by the American population as employed in activities, terrible. If you take out the British banking stuff and things related to that, the United States has been in the worst decay of its life since that time, since the time that young Bush came into government. So now we've reached a point where we have actually killed our own ability to produce. We can no longer produce. The western states, especially the Great Plains states, the great crop growing area, have been destroyed. California, Southern California, all of California, destroyed relative to what it had been before. And so throughout the United States, the population, the incomes, the number of people who are actually doing work, real work, is diminishing as a percentile. We're overwhelmed by British bankers and their masses who serve them. Now we come under the influence of a British queen whose policies curiously coincide with the trends of today. She has prescribed the destruction of the productive powers of the United States, productive powers of all nations generally. The productivity, the people who are employed in actual productivity, producing services that are essential, producing in what we call production. The quality of production, the quantity of production out of the total population is such. We're being destroyed. What they've added to that under Obama, a special kind of hyperinflation. This nation is bankrupt, hopelessly bankrupt. The only way we could save this nation is by actually throwing these guys out of office, the people who represent this out of office, and throw most of this combination of actually British bankers. Most of the bankers we have are either at the top are British bankers, and as they have been ever since Jackson, since President Jackson. We are, as a patriotic nation, we've got a very low score. We have bankers, we don't have patriots. We cut down on the number of patriots to increase the number of bankers. The banking system itself is now in the greatest hyperinflation the world has ever known. No hyperinflation has ever matched that has gone on in the United States. That's all worthless money. Now, what these guys plan to do is to take the worthless money and collect on it against the nation, the people in the nation of the United States. What is against us is mass murder, and the Queen is responsible. The Queen of England is responsible. She is the one who insisted on this kind of program, to cut down productivity and to lower the population of the planet, to reduce the population of the planet rapidly from 7 billion people to about 1. That process is occurring. And one of the great contributors to that process is a particular firm, shall we say, Dodd-Frank. Dodd-Frank is the worst enemy of the American people I can think of right now. They are the key figures being used by the British monarchy to collapse the U.S. economy on itself and to drive down the population level of the U.S. population by methods of starvation and similar kinds of things. This is what we face. We face a nation of weak-minded leaders who will steal anything. We have bankers, always British, always bankers, always British, who have ruined us. We no longer have our industry. It was taken away. Our agriculture is destroyed. We can no longer produce to our own needs. We can no longer produce the infrastructure we require. All these things have been taken from us by those British bums who have controlled Wall Street since the time that Andrew Jackson became President of the United States. The time has now come for us to refuse to swallow the kind of deal that those two crooks want to impose upon us. You know, our dear old crooks, Dodd and Frank. Barney Frank, old Barney Frank, and Daughtery Dodd. And these two creeps are supposed to take over a situation to rob you and effectively to bury you, or to cause somebody else to have to bury you. And that's where we are now. The point is, we've got to stand up on our hind legs and, for a change, realize that we have been swindled. We know how many members of the Congress are going along with the swindle. Go along to get along. The swindle. The go along to get along swindle. It's tantamount to treason. And the members of Congress better wake up to that fact.